I took my own pulse rate when I was in high school, and it was 8 beats below the tennis champion, Bjorn Borg. So in other words, I'm assuming Borg's pulse rate is similar to McEnroe's and Jimmy Connors, his two major opponents back in those days in the 1970s. So to round it off, my pulse rate was 8 beats per minute below a professional tennis player. So that certainly isn't that stronger than other people, or a high metabolism or whatever. That doesn't make any sense. They did tell me back there your metabolism is average. It is not way above average. I had an A grade point average in physical education classes in high school. I did not make any varsity sports teams. I was cut from all of them. And I was happily engaged in extracurricular activities. I was on the forensics team for 3 years, doing original oratory, and I was a volunteer at my church, the Fox Point Lutheran Church, director of the acolytes, but I was not known to have a high metabolism, that's the point I'm making, or to be an athlete, a serious athlete. The next one that comes up along those lines is that I have a long life expectancy. Well, we just recently had an in-law relative who died at age 55 with cancer all over his lungs, that we believe he may have gotten cancer, and he was deployed several times to military conflicts in the Middle East. An average relative of ours, a blood relative who lives to be an older age, lives to be approximately 73 to 78. My father, Marion Kujawski, had cancer all over his body. Essentially starved to death for a year. He lived to age 73, died in 1985. As I mentioned, my Aunt Ruby lived to be age 73. My grandmother, Estelle Melcourt, died at age 66. Her husband, my grandfather, Reuben Obermeyer, age 87. My mother, Miriam Kujawski, lived the longest for us that I've seen, age 91, when she died in 2020. My cousin Barbie, age 52, his wife, 48. We had an in-law relative, 35. I had a friend from high school, a good friend, only made it into, I believe, approximately age 30 or his late 20s. I knew several people who died in elementary school or high school. Anyway, what I'm saying is overall with our blood relatives, the average age for older age is 73 to 78. And the oldest I've ever actually witnessed was my mother, Mary Kujawski, age 91, where she died in 2020. So I've seen zero evidence of any of us, myself or anybody, living to age 100. Unless I'm wrong, I just read in a book the other day, living to something really old, like age 99 or 100, you probably also need to be rich. You need to be at least a millionaire. And there is nobody like that in our family and blood. We have no relatives who are millionaires. So now that's metabolism and life expectancy. The next one's been interrogating me on. It's a difficult interrogation because it just repeats lies all the time. I think the criminal mind wants attention or something. The third category, these are easy to remember. First of all, the first misnomer is metabolism. I've never been anywhere in any age, adulthood or childhood. People have told me that I have an off-the-charts metabolism, or a very strong metabolism. I've looked the word up. As I said, I took my own pulse rate in high school. It's 8 beats below professional tennis players. The next one is life expectancy. The oldest I've actually visually witnessed is my mother, Marion Kujawski, age 91. Otherwise, the average for us is 73 to 78 for the ones of us who make it to older age. And as I said, I've known friends and relatives, other people that have died at all the different ages, toddler, young childhood, elementary, high school, and so on. The third one I'm going to name is rich. I have no knowledge of any of our relatives ever being millionaires or billionaires. And the last one is IQ. And again, I only have evidence that I do not have an off the charts IQ, and that no one in our family does. But most of a high percentage of my blood relatives were nurses or small business or sales. Not large corporations and not millionaires, just small, like a local landlord for an apartment building, a local barkeeper, local shade shop for home decorations, local home decorating, local camera sales and photo finishing processing, local department stores. It's most of us. I don't know of having any blood relatives who are doctors, international businessmen, millionaires, authors, stage entertainers, or anything like that. Nothing off the charts. Going by skills and abilities testing in adulthood through childhood. The most recent one at Sewell car dealerships in Louisiana and Texas, and New Orleans and Dallas. They get the same results as in childhood, in middle school, and in high school. I'm at 90 in math, which is good. It's above average. But it's not off the charts like Steve Jobs. It's not 99 or 100. So in other words, there would be a reason not to blacklist a person because their IQ is not high enough to be blacklisted at 90 in math. Another one is 87 in English, with the normal range being, the average range being 75 to 83. 87 is 4 points above average. It's not up at the Steve Jobs level. It's not off the charts. 83 in science is at the high end of average, 75 to 83. Those are my scores in middle school, high school, then young adult job interviews such as the U.S. Navy and U.S. Army, and then also recently here in middle-aged and older, most recently in Sewell car dealerships, 90 in math, 87 in English, and 83 in science. None of that is up at the Steve Jobs level, none of that is off the charts. So, in other words, I have nothing that says I have a high metabolism, a high IQ, no wealthy blood relatives, no wealthy relatives, nothing like that. The Voice from 1988 to 1991, it attempted to compare me to international stage entertainers, and I have nothing. Again, it's picking things that are completely backwards, so it must want attention. In other words, when I run into people, it just gets nothing but looks of confusion. I already know in childhood, by the time I'm 7 years old and younger, that my sister and our IQs aren't high enough to achieve doctor, that neither one of us are going to be doctors. As for an international stage entertainer or any kind of stage entertainer, I already know in childhood I'm completely terrible at stage entertainment skills. I play clarinet and I'm lousy at it. The highest grade I can get in that in the music class is a B, a C, or a D, playing clarinet. If I were to hit the drum set, This robot delivers rice to guests at this hotel in Shenzhen, China. He's going to the elevator. Hello, Mr. Robot. How are you? You look like you're going to the first floor. Hello. My name is Michael. What is your name? Oh, I thought he was getting off. No? Oh, the first floor, I see. Okay. Wow, there's the... Oh, there we go. There we go. Back to the check-in desk. Oh, it's Michael. It's good to see you again. I was just showing you the raindrops on the window. I've been in Hong Kong here a couple weeks since leaving Shenzhen on the mainland, and I've never really seen it rain here that much. It's been raining pretty much steadily for the past couple weeks. Maybe it's the rainy season or something. There was a typhoon that went through here about a week and a half ago. And so now I wanted to get back to this Brewers report, but before I get to the 1982 World Series, that's Darryl Porter there on my screen, and there's some background in my notes about their deceased interim manager, Harvey Keene. Before I get to the Brewers, I do a preamble here. This is a picture of Hong Kong on the September 9th South China Morning Post, and it shows floodwaters raging through the city, and then it mentions at least 144 people, according to this news report, were hospitalized. Now here in Causeway Bay, I didn't realize this. I've been out walking around each day. Yesterday, for instance, I ate at a Turkish restaurant again, and I certainly didn't notice anything. I walked down Lockhart Road like I normally do, and I had some rice and some lamb and some Piju, called beer in the United States, but Piju here in Hong Kong. Now you might ask me, the stuff you're doing is not very professional. Well, I have not been on a payroll of an employer since last year, 2022, when I worked for MPS Security in Houston, Texas. I was mostly with MPS from most seriously full-time from 2007 until 2010. And then the years going back and forth doing some ESL teaching in the early 2010s here in China and South Korea. I was only on MPS payroll on a part-time basis. But I was with them briefly last year, and unfortunately that didn't work out in Houston. I guess the crime rate has gone down there, because people might have a question: why are you jumping around from one topic to another one and blah, blah, blah? Well, right at the moment, I'm not on anybody's payroll. So I thought I would give you a combined sloppily, amateurishly, a weather report with a 1982 World Series series update. As I said, time really flies. That's Daryl Porter, and unfortunately, he's deceased. And there I have notes on Harvey Keene, and he is deceased. And I did a Brewers thing the other day at TikTok from the 1982 World Series, and a couple hundred people viewed it, watched it. So I this is the information. This downpour here the other day was a record-setting downpour here in Hong Kong. It was serious, and I was just commenting. Here they have a rain total in millimeters, rainfall recorded at observatory's headquarters. They said that was a record going back to 1884. They also have another story underneath that one about a EU, European Union envoy may visit China here in October. This is today. On my computer there is September 11th, 2023. 9/11/2023. So, obviously, if I'm on somebody's payroll, I'll do a better job and write up a little script, and this would be more professional. But going back to Harvey Keene here, I was saying the other day, for the 200 people who looked at it at TikTok, that I was questioning the Brewers manager, his use of some of the players, and the reason I was doing that, I can't really, the Brewers lost the 1982 World Series. As we come up upon the World Series this year in 2023, they lost that one 4-3 to the St. Louis Cardinals. Well, as you know, back in those days, there's another rain connection. This was Game 6, and it was they had a long rain delay. The Brewers ultimately lost 13-1. That's in St. Louis, a full house there at that stadium. But I was saying that, why would you disparage, dead people? In other words, that guy batting there, Daryl Porter, great catcher in Milwaukee and also in St. Louis. He's not alive anymore. And on the mound is one of the Brewers' relief pitchers, and over there you're talking about Harvey Keene, and he's only lived to be age 57. So I do apologize if some of this stuff, offends some people, but I don't think that it does. My mother used to point out she lived to be 91 years old, and she died in September again here of 2020, 3 years ago. And she always asked me to be, polite to people who live shorter. She would mention Melody Wilson, a broadcaster at WTMJ in Milwaukee, who she married a very rich person in the opulent suburb of River Hills, and she only made it to probably her 40s or something like that. Anyway, I was going over this again. Why did Harvey Keene not play Don Money more often and blah, blah, blah? Well, here it mentions there that in Game 6 here, they just weren't well prepared, which is what I'm saying. If I get on somebody's payroll, I'll be better prepared. In Game 6 here, why did the Brewers lose 13-1? What's the rain connection? Well, they had a long rain delay, and it rained on the AstroTurf, and the Brewers played on natural grass. I think that was back in the county stadium days. Now they have Miller Park. So the AstroTurf there was saturated with rainwater. It was slippery, and they made a bunch of errors. And one of the first ones is Ben Ogilvy had a fly ball that he misjudged with the wind and the rain, and it scratched his glove, and he missed it. and the Cardinals started scoring. And Robin Yount, a little while later, had a grounder go between his legs due to the difference, like with a tennis player, like Jimmy Connors or McEnroe or Bjorn Borg, playing on a hard court versus grass. Yount had a grounder uncharacteristically go right underneath his legs for another error. And then coming up here, if it's on this video, Jim Gantner boots the ball and lets the runner get to first. So the Brewers had an awful, right there it says they had 3 errors, only 2 hits, and they're losing 13-0. And they hung on with this rain delay. And it was because of the managers. I'm not as critical as I sound, but the managers didn't have them, just prepare or practice enough on the AstroTurf. They're used to the grass in Milwaukee and that kind of thing. And unfortunately, they had all those errors and they lost Game 6 and they ultimately lost the whole World Series. I was a little critical of the Brewers manager. I'm sorry, he only lived to be 57 years old. Harvey Keene, he died of struggling against heart disease and diabetes. He died in Arizona in 1988, and this World Series took place in 1982. So, I was questioning Keene pulling Vukovic out of Game 7, and I was questioning that they couldn't have put Raleigh Fingers in for one batter because the fans supported him so much. And I was questioning that he didn't use more of his relief pitchers and not better prepared. Hello, this is Michael. A lot of people ask me, have you ever been national? Nope, never. I've never been at any job, school, job interview, or abilities test which has determined that I have national talent or national potential at anything. When I grew up in the 1960s and 1970s, this was a colossal relevant question facing our generation. In terms of skills and abilities assessments by schools and employers, I'm typically 90 in math, 87 in overall English, and 83 in general science. Specifically, my reading comprehension is at 83, and the creative writing component of my overall English skills is at 90. The average range in any subject is 75 to 80.
现在就变淡掉了。 Well, while that assassin over there is planning to attack those people in that TV thing, I think I'll eat these red kidney beans here from Hong Kong. Oops, I spilled that stuff all over the tray, and the maid was already here.
So I was saying, but getting back to the Brewers here, in that playoff series, they had the teams had gotten into it by making some trades, and the Brewers had Ted Simmons batting fourth, and they had gotten him from St. Louis in a trade. They let Sixto Lezcano go, and they replaced him out in right field with Charlie Moore, and they had Simmons behind the plate. I noticed they won more often. I don't know why they don't notice these things when they had the older Don Money in the lineup, when they were able to put him in as a designated hitter. They won some games in Milwaukee, whereas when they went with Roy Howell, who I think they acquired from Texas, he had a very lousy World Series and did not help the Brewers with rallies or knocking runs in or anything like that. But Don Money always seemed to be part of a rally where they won the World Series games in Milwaukee, most of them when Don Money was in the lineup as a designated hitter. And uh, again, they don't show the fan stuff. That was an interim manager back there, Harvey Keene. He only lived to be in his 40s or 50s, and the professional baseball teams did not pick him up as a permanent manager. He accidentally took Pete Vukovich, the Brewers starter, out of a World Series game. I believe it was Game 7, which they lost, and I felt Harvey Keene made a mistake. The Brewers had some weaknesses in their pitching staff, and Vukovich all year long, I believe he retired the next season, and his arm was thrown out anyway. I believe I was saying a moment ago. My point was that there's things fans can't see. They must have seen the Don Money in practice and decide without telling people, they probably decided he was too old to make him the DH all the time. So they were platooning him with Roy Howell. And when it got to the World Series, they needed to give more of their bench players a chance. If they needed to platoon a designated hitter like Money, who was helping them with rallies and win games in the World Series, and they didn't feel like playing him every day, they needed to exchange him with some of the other players on the bench, like Ed Romero or Mark Brohard. When they were platooning him at the DH spot with Roy Howell, Howell was in a slump or something and was not contributing to the Brewers winning. And that was my point a minute ago with making the trade there. That was a controversial trade. They picked up the older Raleigh Fingers, and he was injured for all the World Series games, and the Brewers never let him take the mound or throw one pitch even, which I disagreed with that. They could let the fans see stuff like that. That's why they got Raleigh Fingers. He brought many extra fans into the ballpark, and the fans paid for him. They could have let the fans just see him on the mound for one batter, and they'd see his arm was sore or injured or whatever they were saying. And again, Harvey Keene was not picked up as a permanent manager. I believe he died in his 40s or 50s. He had some kind of disability, that's why I think of that China here likes bringing over foreign people who have disabilities, like mental illnesses and other problems. They like giving the underdog a chance. African Americans, people with disabilities, mental handicaps, and so on. So I was saying that I think one mistake their manager made, he took Pete Vukovich out of Game 7 and he brought McClure in yet another time with an injured Raleigh Fingers. He had to give all his pitchers on the bench a chance for the sake of variety to confuse the opponent, to bring different pitchers in, to ignore their statistics, like if they have a high ERA, like 5.2 ERA, and he was repeatedly bringing the left-handed sidearm pitcher McClure into the games, and so he obviously isn't going to save every World Series game. He's obviously so the Cardinals had a rally and they won the World Series. So they had their controversial trade where they let the high batting Sixto Lezcano go to St. Louis, and St. Louis let him go to San Diego. And they let a reserve player, David Green, go, which St. Louis used him very well in the World Series. And they put Charlie Moore out in right field, essentially a catcher, and they let Darrell Porter go to the Cardinals, and they brought in Raleigh Fingers, and he didn't help them at all in the World Series, even though he brought a lot of fans into the ballpark. He never played in a game in a World Series. So very close World Series, two very fast, quick teams, evenly matched, and the Brewers did lose that one in 1982, 4-3, and the Cards had the home field advantage. Once again, I'm going to stop for the sake of brevity. TikTok has some 10-minute deadlines, and I'd like to ramble on, but I'm going to halt it here.
Oh, this is Michael. Thanks for watching YouTube. This is part 2 of a space satellite wrecked my freshman golf round at Nicolay High School. I thought I'd complete it as best I can in less than a minute. Briefly, I'm a terrible golfer, and I was representing Nicolay for one tournament where they couldn't get anybody else to represent them. And unknown to me, a satellite in outer space was making my heart just completely slam off my rib cage, and my body was bouncing up and down all the fairways. I was hitting every tree, taking every divot. I probably shot over 100 for 9 holes. The other competitors couldn't believe it. They wrote my name down and said they were going to report me to a state board, and would come up to me and touch me and feel me to see that this was real. Hello, hello. Ni hao. Ni hao. Hello, it's good to see you again. This is the end of July 2023 here in Shenzhen, China. This is a old science homework paper I wrote way back in 1972, Mike Kujawski, for science class. March 20th, 1972, 3/20/72. It's called The World of Microscopes. It is a summary of a movie that we watched in grade 8 about microscopes. So I will read it to you briefly here. The first movie was about microscopes, the usage of microscopes, the parts of a microscope, and the many new worlds that can be explored with microscopes. A microscope is an optical instrument consisting of a lens or combination of lenses used to obtain a magnified image of an extremely small object that cannot easily be seen by the naked eye. The movie was mainly about compound microscopes. Once again, the movie was mainly about compound microscopes, which are composed of 2 lenses. The lens closest to the stage is the objective lens, and the other lens is the eyepiece. I have eyepiece as one word there, if you can see it. They are mounted at opposite ends of a metal tube. And here I have a picture of it that I drew in grade 8, which you can see right there at the bottom of the paper. Once again, the lens closest to the stage is the objective lens, and the other lens is the eyepiece. I think I will show my diagram here. I drew a picture back in grade 8. This is where I should be editing in the pictures if I were a professional video editor.
as you can see, there is a drawing of a compound microscope. I have compound microscope there, and then I have the adjusting screw toward the upper middle. I have the eyepiece at the top, the tube in the upper middle. That flat plate down below is called the stage, back there in 1972. And I have there are some other vocabulary terms. The objective lens is directly above the stage, and the illuminating mirror, I guess that's where the light comes from, is below the stage. I assume, I don't remember so long ago, the stage was probably glass. It might have been glass, I don't know. All right, I'll go back to page 1 of this, The World of Microscopes, the movie. We were to write up our notes and tell what was in the movie. Once again, the movie was, where am I here? The movie was mainly about compound microscopes, which are composed of 2 lenses. The lens closest to the stage is the objective lens, and the other lens is the eyepiece. They are mounted on opposite ends of a metal tube, and as you see, I misspelled opposite. The objective lens, it's a metal tube, by the way, that long tubular object in the middle. The objective lens produces a magnified image within the tube. That means it blows up the picture. The eyepiece magnifies this image a second time, which goes to your eye. An object can be magnified anywhere from 10 to 100 times. Wow, that's a lot of magnification there. And there you see how the rays and the eyeball work a little. Simple diagram. Page 2 of The World of Microscopes, my explanation of what the nonfiction science movie was about. There are 3 different kinds of magnification. Low magnification, which doesn't show the object in much detail, but shows a lot of the object or specimen. Medium shows more detail, but not as much of the object. High magnification shows a lot of detail, but you can hardly see the complete object. There are also 3 forms of illumination used in microscopes. They are bright field lighting, dark field lighting, and polarized lighting. I have here over to the right there, eyepiece time objective, 10 times 10 magnified 100 times. And that is the end of that essay. Now, the value of something like this is, as you know, to avoid discipline problems in the classroom. If you just show movies in there, especially Hollywood movies, if you're teaching in a foreign classroom, the students will likely never welcome you back to the classroom as a teacher. They will, say that they love the movie, whether they're telling the truth or not. They'll see it as a way to get out of doing work and homework that is not involving what they feel are their popular subjects of math and science, which they feel, correctly or incorrectly, will probably help them find jobs when they're adults. So if you're able to give them an assignment like this, and especially in a foreign classroom, it might be difficult with discipline problems. When you ask them to write about a movie, they can't just sit there and throw paper airplanes and crack jokes and stuff. That's the thing with the Hollywood movies, that they show many American movies here in Shenzhen. And I did put off the movies as long as I could one semester at a grade 10 high school class here. Finally, by May or June, after I'd been teaching there almost a year, I gave in and let them see some American movies. And of course, that was the end of me. That became a study hall. I would monitor it each day, and they kept insisting on watching Transformers and other American movies, which, by the way, with all the special effects and stunts and stuff that they have in them, you can certainly know about science. But if you're in an American classroom or a foreign classroom, if you can have the young children, the young students write a paper explaining what the nonfiction documentary type movie was about, I think that's a valid homework assignment. Let's go in this one, okay?
No.
I like this one. Hello, this is Michael Kujawski. Newspaper journalism, also called print journalism, can be used in ESL, EFL classes in foreign countries, even in oral English. So here's an example, a copy of that I made of something from a textbook, American class in social studies. The title, How to Write a Newspaper Article. People read newspaper articles to find out what's going on. A person can write a high quality article by following several steps. The first step, choose a topic that people want to read about or need to know. Some examples are current events, community issues, and sports news. Step 2, get the facts. Ask the questions who, what, where, when, and how. Find eyewitnesses or experts and interview them. Write down their words specifically in detail so that they can be quoted in the story. Cover both sides of an issue. For example, should an old house be demolished to make room for a new playground, or should it be repaired and used as a new museum? Step 3, organize the material, decide what's important. A story about a baseball game would tell which teams played, where they played, who won, and what the final score was. Interviews with coaches, highlights of the game, and quotations from fans would add more interest. Step 4, write your first draft. Start with a topic or summary sentence that sums up the main idea of the story. Then fill it in with details, including quotations for interviews. And finally, revise and edit. Read the story aloud to make sure that it makes sense and to summarize. Hello, this is Michael Kujawski. Today I'm going to read the one newspaper article that I published when I was in high school. I was in high school from 1972 until I graduated in the summer of 1976. This was our high school newspaper. I believe it was called the Nicolay Knights page. I went to Nicolay High School in Glendale, Wisconsin. This article that I'm going to read was published on December 20th, 1974 in Knights Page, our high school newspaper. And today, here in Shenzhen, China, is May 11th, 2023. This article was placed on the back page. I was not a regular writer for the school newspaper. By the way, I was on the forensics team for 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior. and I did original oratory. I was not involved in any varsity sports. I was also a volunteer at my church, where I was a volunteer director of the Acolytes in high school for 2 years at the Fox Point Lutheran Church in the 1970s. The title of my article here is called, with the headline they put on it is Rickles, Is He Really Funny? That refers, of course, to the famous comedian Don Rickles, who's deceased at this point. So Rickles, Is He Really Funny? Insulting Machine. As I entered the F-Wing library, I was welcomed by a group of friends huddled around a large table. They greeted me warmly with such questions as, "Who let you in? Ha ha ha," that's sort of a joke. "And when did you escape from the ranch?" One student, referring to my red plaid shirt, asked if someone would get the checkers since I already brought the board. If I would have worn a t-shirt, the line would have been, "What factory are you working at after school?" Trying to ignore this humiliating display, I hoped to quietly slither away, but it was too late. I had already been quote-unquote squared. This scene is typical of a new type of humor that has spread throughout Nicolet, a Don Rickles craze that has turned wholesome students into nightclub entertainers. Junior Mark Bristol, who occasionally imitates Rickles, is going to Las Vegas to see him for the second time. "I think his jokes are so funny that I use them," said Mark. "The majority of students think his routine is funny and that he's the best insulter. When I use his jokes, I'm just kidding around and trying to have a good time. I never try to hurt anyone." Mark also said that he watches Rickles on The Tonight Show and memorizes some of his good jokes. According to Junior Gary Taxman, students admire Rickles and his style of humor. "Students imitate him," explained Gary, "because they're not able to express themselves, so they use someone else's humor. I just ignore it because it doesn't affect me, and it's up to them how they want to act." Junior Dave Wade said, "When you have a model like Rickles, you tend to make your jokes like his rather than like your own." "I recorded Don Rickles once or twice when he was host of The Tonight Show," said Junior Scott Bronson. "He's popular at Nicolet, but a lot of people are being turned off by his constant derogatory remarks about different ethnic groups. I think that only a small minority of boys are involved in imitating Rickles, and they do it because they think they can get attention." Mrs. Edel Scheibler, an F-Wing librarian, said that she hasn't noticed a student trend toward using Rickles' jokes. "It depends on the mood of the day," said Mrs. Scheibler. "Although there haven't been any severe problems, sometimes students kid around and I have to ask them to quiet down." That was in quotation marks. Junior Paul Gondek said that while some students imitate Rickles, most just have a natural habit of using popular Rickles phrases or jokes that they have seen on TV or heard from other students. Paul pointed out that, quote, "kids like copying his style of hacking and cutting down," unquote. Although most students interviewed said they felt the student body was aware of the growing popularity and usage of Rickles' jokes, senior Mike Shanovich, along with others, disagreed. Quote, "I don't like his act," unquote, stated Mike. "I don't think he's popular at Nicolet, and I've never heard his jokes done by any students." Karen Marcus, a junior, said she had Never heard anybody talk about him. Quote, how people can like him so much, I'll never understand. When I see students imitating Rickles, I walk away because I've heard all the jokes before, added junior Scott McFadden. It changes some people's personalities from bad to worse. He's popular among students because of his sarcastic style of humor. He's the kind of comedian that a high school student would like, explained junior Jack Quinlevin. Another person jokingly said, I like him because he's got a dynamite personality and a bald head. Unfortunately, Rickles wasn't present to return the insult. He reportedly had to return to the home when he was found walking around with his robe open. Squared, Don, you hockey puck.